Good evening, Britain. Imagine being a Royal Air Force family at RAF Akrotiri, sheltering under a dining table as Iranian drones detonate over your airfield. Now, imagine that at the exact same moment, 500 miles away, 100 migrant boats are effectively stuck in a maritime standoff because the very warships meant to protect our coast are being scrambled toward a scorched earth conflict in the Middle East. Last night, the Whitehall varnish officially melted. For the first time, Iranian forces have hit European military infrastructure, and the British border has been hit by a surge of 500 arrivals after a 28-day silence. Is Keir Starmer presiding over a nation or a sovereign autopsy? Tonight, we are exposing the double front crisis that has left the UK vulnerable, expensive, and out of options. RAF Akrotiri is no ordinary base. It is our unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean. But last night, that carrier was hit. While the Prime Minister fumes from the safety of the dispatch box, British personnel were ordered to avoid windows as explosions tore through the night sky. The nail in this story is the Type 45 scandal. We have 6 world-class destroyers, yet only one, the HMS Duncan, is operational to defend our people. We are witnessing a strategic collapse where we rely on Israel and America to destroy the very launchers that are targeting British soil. But the crisis has a second face. In the Middle East, the Hormuz noose is tightening. As Iranian officials threaten to set shipping lanes on fire, a staggering 46% surge in UK gas prices has hit your wallet. Here is the stunning collaboration. As Western warships flood the region to counter Tehran, the human trafficking routes have hit a logistical wall. Hundreds of boats are reportedly stuck in the Middle East, unable to navigate through the high-density military cordons. It is a categorical inversion of the border crisis. The war we didn't want is inadvertently doing what the government couldn't, halting the flow.
While the military is distracted, the Mother Nature reprieve in the English Channel has ended. After 28 days of impassable weather, the people smugglers have checked their meteorologists and launched a massive offensive. 7 boats are in the water right now, and the UK is on the verge of hitting a record 40,000 arrivals for the year. While the Green Party's Zach Polanski visits Calais to call for safe routes, the British taxpayer is watching £8 million a day vanish into hotels, while their own energy bills skyrocket. A nation doesn't collapse from one blow. It collapses when it is hit from 2 sides at once. We are witnessing a deadlock between a leadership that monitors while our bases are bombed, and a public that knows its sovereignty has been liquidated. The Iranian strikes were a global reset, but the 46% gas spike is the national bill. The curiosity of the viewer shouldn't be about whether we join the strikes. It should be about who is left to protect the UK when the double front finally reaches Dover. British security have been called. The standoff has begun.
107 police officers injured, homes smashed open, cars burned in residential streets, a leisure centre reduced to a mangled, smoking skeleton, migrant families fleeing their neighbourhoods in the dead of night. These are not images from faraway conflicts. These are scenes from towns across Ireland and the UK, where anti-immigration unrest has erupted with a scale and ferocity few anticipated. The damage is staggering, not only because of its size, but because of what it signals: a breakdown of trust, an atmosphere thick with fear, and a public mood turning sharper by the hour. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that these events are not isolated sparks. They are flare-ups of the same pressure building across 2 nations, pressure that no government has yet managed to release. In Ballymena, tension burst without warning. Streets that had been quiet days earlier were suddenly filled with the crackling roar of fireworks being fired horizontally into police shields. Bricks and bottles followed. Officers pushed forward, fell back, regrouped, and were struck again. For 3 consecutive nights, the clashes grew more severe, the explosions brighter, the crowd more determined. When daylight returned, the cost was brutally evident. Dozens of officers were hurt, families found their windows smashed, and cars stood gutted on driveways. Migrant communities pasted makeshift notices to their doors, insisting their houses were British households, hoping it might be enough to stop someone from shattering the next pane of glass. But fear spread faster than reassurance could. Entire streets saw families of Romanian, Bulgarian, and Filipino origin packing their belongings into their cars, leaving the homes they had lived in for years. In one neighbourhood, nearly 2/3 of a Roma community left altogether, too frightened to stay another night. The violence then struck Larne. A leisure centre temporarily housing displaced migrants was forced open by masked men and set alight. Flames tore through the roof. Fire crews battled to contain the blaze. As police confirmed, it was a deliberate attack. Officers brought in reinforcement units, including water cannons, to regain control of the surrounding streets. The sense of instability did not fade with the smoke. It settled in, heavy and unmistakable, a belief that something fundamental had shifted.
Dublin, throwing bottles and launching fireworks at authorities during an anti-immigration protest sparked by allegations of an attack on a young girl.
Across Ireland, anger was erupting in multiple places at once. These clashes were not spreading from town to town like contagion. They were surfacing independently, each driven by its own mixture of frustration, fear, and political disillusionment. And in Dublin, the tensions snapped into full view. More than 1,000 protesters surged through southwest Dublin after news broke that an asylum seeker had been charged with the alleged assault of a 10-year-old girl. The crowd pushed forward with a force that overwhelmed officers. A Garda vehicle was set ablaze. A helicopter circling overhead was hit repeatedly by laser beams. Officers were struck by fireworks fired like munitions. Inside the hotel housing asylum seekers, families pressed themselves against interior walls as the sounds of glass, explosions and shouting filled the air. But what's most alarming is not just the violence itself, but the pattern it fits into. Across the UK the previous year, more than 30 towns had already faced their own anti-immigration demonstrations, some spiralling into nights of open disorder. Hotels became flashpoints, streets filled with confrontations. Councils spent millions trying to stabilise communities, often with only partial success. Put together, these events reveal a continent-wide unease, where social tension no longer waits for a single trigger. It erupts wherever the pressure is highest. Inside Downing Street, these scenes have landed with the weight of a political crisis. Keir Starmer, already under pressure to bring immigration under firmer control, now faces a reality where unrest is unfolding faster than policy. His Home Secretary has pushed to accelerate deportations, tighten asylum rules, and reduce visa pathways for workers and families, arguing that public confidence can only be rebuilt through decisive action. Yet these measures have not calmed the streets. Instead, the government finds itself caught between two forces moving simultaneously. One side accuses Starmer of being too slow, too cautious, too unwilling to confront what they see as a national emergency. The other argues the government is abandoning humanitarian responsibilities and fueling fear with rhetoric that emboldens extremists. This divide has created a political grey zone, one where neither side feels listened to, and both feel increasingly angry. Online networks magnify that anger relentlessly. Videos of clashes in Ballymena, fires in Larne, and confrontations in Dublin are being clipped, shared, distorted, and weaponised. Narratives form instantly. Some are false, others exaggerated, but all of them spread faster than official statements can correct. And as those narratives grow, they build a sense that the authorities are no longer in control. For Starmer, this is the nightmare scenario, a security challenge that morphs into a political one, then feeds back into the streets, creating a cycle neither legislation nor press conferences can easily break. Across both islands, police forces are reviewing their plans, strengthening patrols, and preparing for more unrest. Community leaders are meeting behind closed doors, trying to calm residents who are terrified of further reprisals. Councils are assessing damage to homes, shops, and public buildings, unsure how they will fund the repairs. Migrant families continue to leave neighbourhoods where they believed they were safe. In every conversation, from police stations to Parliament, the same fear echoes: the next eruption may not wait for weeks or months. It could happen tomorrow, triggered by a rumour, an allegation, a video, even a misunderstanding. And when you consider the scale of the destruction already seen, burned buildings, displaced families, entire communities emptied, and more than 100 officers injured, the stakes become painfully clear. If this is what a single wave of anger looks like, what happens when the next one hits? And will the UK or Ireland be ready when it does?
To 500,000 foreign nationals who can prove they have no criminal record and have lived in Spain for at least 5 months before the start of 2026. The legal status will give the migrants the ability to legally work and 1-year residency permit, which could be extended.
Spain has announced it will grant legal residency to 500,000 undocumented migrants, and the impact could be.
History often repeats itself, but rarely with this much warning. In 2015, Angela Merkel's welcome policy changed the face of Europe forever, triggering a movement of 1.3 million people. Today, in Madrid, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez has just hit the reset button on European borders. By granting legal status to 500,000 undocumented migrants, he hasn't just changed the law in Spain. He has set off a geopolitical chain reaction that leads directly to the White Cliffs of Dover. As a massive human caravan begins its journey from Africa toward the southern shores of Europe, the question in Westminster is no longer if they are coming, but how many will end up in a dinghy in Calais. Is Keir Starmer prepared for a Spanish armada of unregulated arrivals? The decision by the socialist government in Spain is being hailed by liberals as a move of dignity and justice. But for those tasked with European security, it is a nightmare. Sánchez argues that an aging population needs these workers, but the reality on the ground is different. Spain suffers from record youth unemployment. There is little work to be found. Experts argue that this amnesty acts as a massive pull factor, signalling to mainland Africa that the gates are open. We are already seeing the footage, thousands queuing outside consulates, and a caravan of people moving towards population centres. But for most, Spain is just the gateway. The real destination is the rich north, the industrialised economies of Germany, France, and ultimately the UK.
For Prime Minister Keir Starmer, this news couldn't come at a worse time. His inbox is already overflowing with a cost of living crisis, backbench rebellions, and the high-profile fallout of figures like Peter Mandelson letting the country down. Starmer's Greenland and cost of living interventions are being constantly derailed by the reality of the Channel. If the 2015 Syrian crisis caused a schism in European politics that never fully healed, this new influx could be the star moulder, the event that melts down the Labour government's attempt to project a stable border policy. Critics warn that the UK is still seen as the soft option, and 500,000 newly legalised Europeans will only increase the pressure on the northern French coast as spring approaches.
Beyond the economics lies the question of security. Data from Spain shows a staggering disparity. While migrants make up 14% of the population, they are allegedly linked to 30% of the crime. This security paradox is what haunts the northern nations. As freedom of movement allows these individuals to shift across the continent, the vetting process becomes a game of shadows. When a nation grants amnesty to 500,000 people at once, can they truly know who is entering the system? It is a gamble with the social fabric of the entire continent, and the UK sits at the very end of that chain.
Pedro Sánchez says he is choosing the path of empathy, but in the cold reality of geopolitics, one nation's empathy is another nation's emergency. The Spanish Armada of 2024 isn't coming with ships of war, it's coming with the momentum of a policy shift that cannot be undone. Keir Starmer is waiting for a big moment to save his premiership, but the moment arriving on the horizon is one he didn't plan for. The breaking point Nigel Farage warned about years ago is being tested once again. The caravan is moving, the amnesty is signed, and the Channel is waiting. The silence from Downing Street is the sound of a government realization. You can control the narrative, but you cannot control the tide.